The Ithorian elite's head snapped back, spraying black blood as Sergeant Jake Thompson's armor-piercing bullet tore through the alien's supposedly indestructible skull. Thompson slammed another magazine into his rifle as he surveyed the carnage. Dozens of 8-foot-tall Ithorian super-soldiers lay dead, their genetically engineered bodies shredded by human ingenuity and determination. Just hours ago, these same warriors had brutally crushed a miners' revolt on Zeta 9, a remote human colony under Ithorian control. Thompson's friend Mike had been publicly executed by the cruel overseer Tharos, an act that filled the battle-hardened sergeant with a cold rage. Stalking through the Ithorian base, Thompson and his outnumbered squad advanced. Alarms blared as human guerrilla teams hit key systems. The ruthless Ithorian Empire had pushed humanity to the brink, treated like slaves, starved, beaten. No more. Today, Thompson and his soldiers would show the galaxy that nothing was unkillable once humans set their minds to it. This was just the beginning. But as they reached the command center, a new signal pinged on Thompson's helmet HUD. His blood ran cold. The Ithorians had launched a full-scale invasion of the human colonies. Millions would die. Unless Thompson found a weakness to bring this supposedly invincible foe to its knees. The fate of humanity itself hung in the balance. Failure was not an option. Thompson and his team crept through the shadows of the Ithorian supply depot on Zeta 9, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Liam, the tech genius, took point, his eyes scanning for any sign of security systems or patrols. Zack and Jace, the former Ithorian slaves, followed close behind, their knowledge of the enemy's ways proving invaluable. "The clearance chip should be in the central control room," Zack whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of machinery. "But it won't be easy to get there." Jake nodded, his grip tightening on his rifle. "We'll make it happen, we have to." As they made their way deeper into the facility, the team stumbled upon a shocking discovery. Through a glass observation window, they saw rows of tanks filled with a glowing green liquid. Inside each tank floated a massive, grotesque figure, a new breed of Ithorian elite, even more terrifying than the ones they had faced before. "Jesus Christ!" Liam muttered, his face pale. "What the hell are those things?" Before anyone could respond, an alarm blared through the complex. The team had been spotted. "Move now!" Jake yelled, urging his squad forward. They raced through the corridors, dodging blaster fire from Ithorian guards. Finally, they reached the control room. Liam's fingers flew across the keypad, hacking through the security protocols. The door hissed open, revealing the precious clearance chip. But as Jake reached for it, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Not so fast, human scum." Tharos stepped out from the shadows, his eyes blazing with hatred. "I remember you from the mining colony. You'll pay for your insolence." The Ithorian overseer lunged at Jake, his enhanced strength fueled by rage. They grappled in a brutal hand-to-hand battle, trading blows that would have shattered a normal human's bones. Zack and Jace leapt to Jake's aid, using their insider knowledge of Ithorian weak points to land devastating strikes. Liam snatched the clearance chip and yelled, "I got it! Let's go!" Battered but unbroken, the team fled the supply depot, leaving a furious Tharos in their wake. Back at their hideout, Liam plugged in the chip and accessed the Ithorian database. What they found left them stunned. The Ithorians' regenerative abilities, they come from a mineral called regenerium, Liam said, his voice shaking, and it's only found on a few planets. Jace leaned in, studying the data. If we could find a way to neutralize regenerium, we might actually stand a chance against those bastards, Jake finished, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. But as they dug deeper, they stumbled upon a heavily encrypted file labeled Project Ultima. Before Liam could crack it, the hideout door exploded inward. Ithorian forces swarmed in, led by a revenge-seeking Tharos. Blaster bolts filled the air as the team fought desperately to escape. Zack cried out in pain, a searing shot tearing through his chest. Jake and Jace dragged their wounded comrade to a stolen Ithorian shuttle, barely making it out alive. As they fled Zeta 9, Liam's scanner beeped in alarm. Shit, they planted a tracker on the ship. Jake gritted his teeth, plotting their next move. We head for the closest planet with regenerarium deposits. We need to find a way to counter its effects before the Ithorians catch up. With Zach's life fading and the enemy closing in, the team set a course for the uncharted world, their last hope in a war that would determine the fate of humanity itself. The stolen Ithorian shuttle shuddered as it entered the uncharted planet's atmosphere. Jake gripped the controls, his knuckles white as he guided the craft through the turbulent descent. Liam hunched over the navigation console, scanning for any signs of regenerarium deposits or Ithorian pursuit. There, Liam said, pointing to a blinking light on the display. I'm picking up traces of regenerarium beneath the surface, near some kind of structure. Jake nodded, angling the shuttle towards the coordinates. As they approached the site, the outline of a hidden facility emerged from the rocky terrain. The team exchanged glances, a mix of hope and apprehension on their faces. The shuttle touched down near the entrance, kicking up clouds of dust. Jake and Jace helped a weakened Zach out of the craft, while Liam gathered their gear. They approached the facility cautiously, weapons at the ready. Inside, the team found themselves in a long-abandoned human research lab. Dust-covered equipment and flickering lights hinted at a hasty evacuation. Liam accessed a nearby terminal, his fingers flying over the keys. Got something, he said, his eyes widening. This place was run by a Dr. Elias Novak. He was studying regenerarium and its effects on different species. Jace picked up a scattered notebook, flipping through the pages. Looks like he was trying to create a compound to neutralize regenerarium's regenerative properties. But why would he want to do that? Zach asked, his voice strained. Jake's eyes narrowed. To level the playing field against the Ithorians. As they delved deeper into the facility, the team uncovered more of Dr. Novak's research. Video logs revealed that he had been close to a breakthrough when the Ithorians raided the lab and captured him. The logs mentioned a secret Ithorian project called Ultima, which seemed to be the reason behind Dr. Novak's abduction. We need to find Dr. Novak, Jake said, his jaw set with determination. He's the key to stopping the Ithorians. Using Dr. Novak's notes, Liam managed to synthesize a small quantity of the neutralizing compound. He carefully extracted a sample of Zach's blood, which still contained traces of regenerarium from his time as an Ithorian slave. As he applied the compound to the blood sample, the team held their breath. The effect was immediate. The regenerarium in Zach's blood ceased its regenerative function, confirming the compound's efficacy. A glimmer of hope spread through the group, tempered by the knowledge of the daunting task ahead. Just as they prepared to leave, the facility's alarms blared to life. Security feeds showed Tharos and his elite warriors breaching the entrance, their weapons primed for blood. They must have tracked the shuttle, Liam said, his face pale. Jake's grip tightened on his rifle. Then we'll have to fight our way out. The team took up defensive positions, using the facility's layout to their advantage. As the Ithorians closed in, Jake and his rebels engaged them in a fierce firefight. Blaster bolts scorched the walls, and the acrid smell of burning metal filled the air. In the chaos of battle, Jace spotted an opportunity. He lunged forward, injecting an elite warrior with a dose of the neutralizing compound. The Ithorian soldier stumbled, its regenerative powers faltering. Jake seized the moment, unloading a barrage of armor-piercing rounds into the weakened elite, finally bringing it down. The realization that they could defeat the Ithorians with Dr. Novak's research galvanized the team. With renewed determination, they fought their way back to the shuttle, leaving a trail of Ithorian bodies in their wake. As they blasted off the planet's surface, Jake plotted their next move. They would infiltrate the Ithorian homeworld and rescue Dr. Novak from the clutches of Project Ultima. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, but armed with the knowledge of regenerarium's weakness, they finally had a fighting chance. The shuttle streaked through the stars, carrying the hopes and fears of a species on the brink of annihilation. Jake's thoughts turned to the battles ahead and the sacrifices they would have to make to ensure humanity's survival. But in that moment, as his team stood united against the darkness, he knew that they would stop at nothing to bring the Ithorian Empire to its knees. The stolen Ithorian shuttle hurtled through the void, its engines straining as Jake pushed them to their limits. The human colony's distress signal played on repeat, a desperate plea for help against the Ithorian onslaught. Zack leaned forward in his seat, studying the readouts. The colony's defenses won't hold for long, they need us. Jake's hands tightened on the controls, his mind racing. Every second they delayed, more innocent lives were lost, but Dr. Novak held the key to ending this war. If they didn't rescue him, humanity's future would be measured in days. He looked to his team, seeing the same conflict etched on their faces. "We have to split up," Jake said, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. "Zack and I will head to the colony, buy them some time. Liam, Jace, you two continue on to the Ithorian homeworld. Find Dr. Novak and bring him back." Liam nodded, his jaw set. "We won't let you down, Jake." As the shuttle descended into the colony's atmosphere, the scars of battle came into focus. Buildings lay in ruins, fires raging unchecked. Ithorian dropships disgorged waves of elite warriors, their armor gleaming in the harsh light. Jake and Zack hit the ground running, weapons ready. The colonists rallied behind them, a ragtag militia of farmers and miners. Jake moved among them, shouting orders, directing their fire. Zack darted from cover to cover, his rifle cracking with each precise shot. The Ithorians fell, but more always took their place. "We need to thin their numbers," Jake growled, ducking as a plasma bolt sizzled overhead. "Zack, remember that weakness in their armor's power supply?" Zack grinned, pulling a handful of grenades from his belt. "One step ahead of you." They moved in tandem, Jake drawing the elite's fire while Zack flanked them. The grenades found their marks, the resulting explosions cascading through the Ithorian ranks. For a moment, it seemed they might turn the tide. Then the screams reached Jake's ears. He turned to see a group of children huddled in the ruins of a school, Ithorian elites closing in. Zack was already moving, sprinting towards them with reckless abandon. Jake provided covering fire, his heart in his throat. Zack reached the children just as the elites opened fire. He threw himself in front of them, his body shielding them from the onslaught. Jake watched in horror as his friend jerked and spasmed, his lifeblood staining the ground. With a roar of fury, Jake charged forward, the last of the neutralizing compound coursing through his veins. He tore into the elites, his rifle forgotten, his fists and fury his only weapons. The compound lent him strength, turning his skin to iron, his bones to steel. The Ithorians fell before him, their regenerative powers useless in the face of his rage. As the last elite fell, Jake stumbled to Zack's side. His friend looked up at him, a weak smile on his lips. "Guess I finally got to be the hero," he whispered. Jake held him as the light faded from his eyes, tears mixing with the blood and dirt on his face. The children Zack had saved huddled nearby, their eyes wide with fear and awe. In that moment, Jake made a silent vow. Zack's sacrifice would not be in vain. Light years away, Liam and Jace crept through the sterile halls of the Ithorian research facility. The stolen clearance chip granted them access, but every shadow held the threat of discovery. They found Dr. Novak in a secure lab, hunched over a microscope. The scientist looked up as they entered, hope and fear warring on his face. "Are you here to rescue me?" Liam nodded. "We're with the human resistance. We need your help to stop the Ithorians." Dr. Novak's eyes widened. "You don't understand. The Ultima Project it's not just the next generation of elites. They're immune to the neutralizing compound, unstoppable." Jace cursed under his breath. "So what do we do now?" Before Dr. Novak could respond, alarms blared through the facility. Tharos burst into the lab, flanked by a squad of Ultima warriors. Their armor was sleeker, their weapons more advanced. Liam raised his rifle, but Jace pushed him towards the door. "Get Novak out of here," he said, his voice calm despite the fear in his eyes. "I'll hold them off." Liam hesitated, but Dr. Novak grabbed his arm, pulling him away. They ran, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Liam forced himself not to look back, focusing on the mission. They had to escape, had to get this information back to Jake. They reached the extraction point just as the Ithorian patrols closed in. Liam half-dragged Dr. Novak into the waiting shuttle, his heart pounding as they lifted off. As they broke atmosphere, he finally allowed himself to think of Jace. The man had been more than a comrade, he had been a friend. The journey back to the colony was a blur. When they landed, Liam found Jake standing among the ruins, his eyes hollow with grief. He listened as Liam relayed Dr. Novak's revelations, his fists clenching with each word. When Liam told him of Jace's sacrifice, Jake closed his eyes, his shoulders slumping under the weight of his loss. 2 friends, 2 brothers, gone in the span of a day. The pain was almost unbearable. But as he looked out over the survivors of the colony, as he saw the hope and determination in their eyes, Jake knew he couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. He turned to Liam and Dr. Novak, his voice hard with resolve. "We finish this," he said. "For Zack, for Jace, for every human who suffered under the Ithorian's boot. We find a way to stop the Ultima Project, and we end this war, once and for all." Jake's heart raced as he pored over Dr. Novak's notes, searching for any weakness in the Ithorian's defenses. Liam and the other resistance leaders huddled around a holographic display, studying the schematics of the enemy command ship. "There," Jake said, pointing to a vulnerability in the ship's power core. "If we can get a small team inside, we might be able to bring down their whole fleet." Liam nodded, his face grim. "It's a long shot, but it's our best chance. We've intercepted communications that suggest the Ithorians are planning a massive invasion of our core worlds. We have to stop them before it's too late." They spent the next few hours refining their plan, handpicking a team of their most skilled fighters and hackers. Jake and Liam would lead the infiltration, accompanied by a dozen brave men and women willing to risk everything for the cause. As they boarded a stolen Ithorian transport, disguised as a supply ship, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. He checked his weapons for the 100th time, the weight of the neutralizing compound heavy in his pocket. The journey to the command ship was tense, each minute stretching into an eternity. When they finally docked, Jake and Liam exchanged a look of grim determination before leading their team into the belly of the beast. The corridors were eerily quiet, the only sound the hum of machinery and the distant echo of Ithorian voices. They moved swiftly and silently, taking out guards with precise shots and hacking through security doors. But as they neared the power core, a figure stepped out of the shadows blocking their path. Jake's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the face of his once friend, Jace. "Jace?" he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. But the man before him was not the Jace he knew. His skin was mottled with Ithorian scales, his eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. He had been transformed into a half-human, half-Ithorian hybrid, imbued with the regenerative abilities of the elites. "You shouldn't have come here, Jake," Jace said, his voice a twisted mockery of the man he once was. "The Ithorians are the future. Humanity is weak, doomed to extinction." Jake shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. "Jace, this isn't you. They've done something to you, twisted your mind. Please, come back to us." But Jace only laughed, a cruel and bitter sound. "There is no going back, only forward into the glorious embrace of the Ithorian Empire." With a roar of rage, Jace lunged at Jake, his enhanced strength and speed making him a formidable opponent. Jake dodged and weaved, his heart breaking with each blow he landed on his former friend. Their battle took them through the corridors of the ship, alarms blaring as the rest of the team fought their way towards the power core. Jake knew he had to end this, had to stop Jace before he could compromise their mission. In a final desperate move, Jake tackled Jace to the ground, pinning him with the weight of his body. He looked into those glowing red eyes, searching for any hint of the man he once knew. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry." With a quick, decisive motion, Jake snapped Jace's neck, ending his suffering and his threat to the mission. He collapsed on top of his friend's body, sobs racking his frame. But there was no time to mourn. Liam's voice crackled over the comms, urging him to hurry. Jake forced himself to his feet, pushing aside his grief and focusing on the task at hand. He burst onto the bridge just as Liam and Dr. Novak were confronted by Tharos and his Ultima warriors. The Ithorian commander sneered at them, his eyes glinting with malice. "You really thought you could defeat us," he gloated. "The Ithorian Empire is eternal, unstoppable. Your pathetic resistance ends here." But Dr. Novak stepped forward, a syringe clutched in his trembling hand. "Not if I have anything to say about it," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. Before anyone could react, the scientist plunged the needle into his own neck, injecting himself with the untested neutralizing compound. He screamed in agony as the liquid coursed through his veins, his body convulsing with the force of the chemical reaction. Then, with a final defiant roar, Dr. Novak charged at the Ultima warriors, his body glowing with a blinding white light. The Ithorians fired their weapons, but the blasts seemed to pass right through him, as if he were made of pure energy. Dr. Novak collided with the Ultima warriors, and a massive explosion rocked the bridge. Jake and Liam were thrown to the ground, their ears ringing from the blast. When the smoke cleared, the Ultima warriors were nothing but piles of ash, their regenerative abilities neutralized by Dr. Novak's sacrifice. Tharos lay on the ground, his body broken and bloody. Jake and Liam wasted no time, rushing to the control panel and uploading the computer virus that would disable the Ithorian fleet. The ship shuddered as the virus took hold, systems failing and alarms blaring. They barely made it to an escape pod before the command ship exploded, the force of the blast propelling them out into space. From their vantage point, they watched as the Ithorian fleet fell into disarray, ships colliding and exploding as the virus wreaked havoc on their systems. It was a bittersweet victory, one at a terrible cost. As they drifted in the void waiting for rescue, Jake thought of all those who had sacrificed their lives for this moment. Zack, Jace, Dr. Novak, and countless others who had fought and died to free humanity from the yoke of Ithorian oppression. He vowed to honor their memory, to ensure that their deaths had not been in vain. The Ithorian Empire had been dealt a crippling blow, but the war was far from over. Jake knew that he and the other survivors would have to continue the fight, to build a better future for all of humanity. As the rescue ships approached, Jake closed his eyes, a single tear trickling down his cheek. The road ahead would be long and hard, but he knew that the resilience and determination of the human spirit would see them through. The Ithorians, and any other threat that dared to underestimate humanity, would learn the true meaning of strength in the face of adversity. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.